Karen wants a new car after seeing TikTok push the current trend, presenting a major difficulty in her marriage. My wife and I married 5 years ago, and she is currently pregnant with our child. A few days ago, she emailed me a TikTok video of a lady debating the benefits and drawbacks of a push gift on a podcast. I had no idea what it meant at first, but after some investigation, I discovered that it is essentially a gift of appreciation to the lady who is bearing your child. This concept appeared really weird to me. Even still, it is incredibly important to hear your spouse express his gratitude for what women go through throughout pregnancy and childbirth. The features of materialism halted me. The female TikTok user suggested that the guy get a permanent tattoo on his lower body and give her a house and a car as unique gifts. She kept saying that it's a body for a body. Although I thought they were a little extreme and nasty, I think the expectations were reasonable. Couples make the decision to have a child together. My wife was not under any pressure to become pregnant since, like me, she wants to be a parent. I thought that would be the final stage. I just reacted to the TikTok by using laughing emojis and proceeded. I believe she released the video as a spoof, like, "Oh my gosh, this is so ridiculous," while she was in another room. I replied to the video. She contacted me, not expecting a tattoo or an expensive apartment, but rather asking me to use my own money to buy a car for her. I looked at her, almost astonished, and broke out laughing. Even though I knew I was incorrect, my spouse and I agreed that individuals may be dumb on sometimes. I poked her to check if she was really serious. She felt annoyed and expressed her need for a true push present. I informed her that having a healthy child and parenting are her talents. In terms of actual things, I'll probably give her a Mother's Day card, a day off, and a couple pieces of jewelry she likes that are around $700. I told her that if she truly desired an extra automobile, it would be ours as well as hers. She described it as inadequate in light of what she was going to go through. She continued on asking me whether I felt she was undeserving. She is worthy since she is my partner and my child's mother, but she must also be realistic and recognize that none of us are individually deserving of what she is asking for. Not that BTH. My husband is intending to give me birthstone jewelry as a pregnancy gift. In addition, I am giving him an engraved watch. TikTok videos totally ruin relationships. My sister-in-law almost left her brother-in-law's house when she refused to build him a boo basket for Halloween. I don't understand why women seek relationship advice from TikTok. On social media, connections are dissolving at an alarming rate. Let's go on to story number 2. Years later, an ex-wife who deceived her husband and abandoned her family reappears with their child, appealing for forgiveness. How should I proceed? I am 37 years old, and my ex-wife is 36 years old. We met in our mid-20s. When we initially met, I was around 24 years old and worked for the same corporation. After 2 years of dating, we married and had 2 children, now aged 7 and 9. She wasn't delighted about her unexpected second pregnancy, despite my assurances that it would be fine if she did. I didn't want to make her go through anything she didn't want. She also failed to kill it. We were still very much in love with one another and our first child, and everything between us was perfect. That was different following the second pregnancy, however. Life had been a series of challenges ever since Angela and I welcomed our first child into the world. Initially, we were filled with joy and hope, eager to embrace parenthood. Angela had made the decision to leave her job after our first child was born, taking on the role of a stay-at-home mother. It was a choice we believed would allow her to focus on our family while I worked tirelessly to provide for us. However, as time went on, the dynamic of our household shifted dramatically, particularly after the arrival of our second daughter. At first, Angela seemed to thrive in her new role. She cared for our eldest child and managed the household, but as she became pregnant again, something changed. The once lively and engaged woman I loved slowly transformed into someone I scarcely recognized. It was as though a dark cloud had settled over her, shrouding our home in a palpable tension. I tried to understand what was happening, attributing her mood swings to the hormonal changes associated with pregnancy. We all thought it would improve over time, but instead, things deteriorated further. With each passing day, both our daughter and I learned to tread cautiously around her. Angela's temperament became increasingly unpredictable. She would often lash out at either me or our oldest child for the slightest provocation. It felt like walking on eggshells, trying not to set her off. I was in charge of everything: the finances, the kids' schooling, the upkeep of our home. Angela had chosen to relinquish her job, and while I admired her commitment to being a stay-at-home mother, the burden of responsibilities became overwhelming. After our second daughter was born, Angela's exhaustion seemed to intensify. We hired a maid during her pregnancy, as she claimed she was too drained to manage the house and our children. I was hesitant, but eventually acquiesced, not wanting to add more stress to her life. I justified it to myself, thinking that once the baby arrived, things would return to normal. But as the months rolled on, it became clear that this new normal was anything but. Angela remained distant, glued to the TV, and barely interacted with our children. There were days when she would hire our neighbor to take them to the park while she stayed at home, lost in her own world. I felt a growing resentment bubbling inside me. Here I was, working long hours, trying to provide for our family, and yet Angela wouldn't even lift a finger around the house. The cost of hiring a maid was becoming unmanageable, especially as I tried to save for our daughter's future. I reached a breaking point when our youngest was about 6 months old. I knew I had to talk to Angela about our situation. I arranged for my parents to watch the girls for the day, understanding that this conversation would be delicate. I approached her, acknowledging that I understood she was exhausted but emphasizing my need for her help. I proposed that we reduce the maid's hours to save money and that she could take on some household responsibilities. But when I broached the subject, she immediately pushed back, claiming she was too busy babysitting our children to contribute to any chores. In that moment, our discussion spiraled into a heated argument. She accused me of not understanding her struggle, demanding that I earn more money instead of guilting her about our finances. I tried to reason with her, but it felt like I was talking to a wall. Frustration surged as I pointed out that she was neglecting our children, allowing them to watch hours of mindless TV while she indulged in reality shows. Her response was a defensive tirade, claiming I was spying on her through the maid. It was as if I had struck a nerve. She exploded with anger, telling me I was the one who should be doing more. Things escalated quickly. I called her out on her failures, stating that she was not only being a poor mother but also a neglectful wife. My words struck her hard, and in her rage she pushed me. I stumbled backward, hitting the coffee table, the glass shattering under my weight. The pain shot through my body as I landed on the floor, needing medical attention. In that moment, I saw a glimpse of the woman I once loved. She was crying and apologizing profusely, but my trust had already been shattered. The aftermath of that incident was tumultuous. I told her I couldn't trust her anymore, not just with me but with our children. I didn't want to risk her losing control around them. After a week of her pleading, we reached a fragile agreement. She would seek treatment and spend time living with her parents while I focused on caring for our daughters. I hoped this time apart would help us both heal. We even started marriage counseling, and for a while it seemed like things were improving. Angela's therapist reported that she was making strides in addressing her postpartum depression and anger management issues. However, just when I thought we were on the right track, Angela abruptly stopped attending therapy. Communication became sporadic, and though I tried to reach out, she would dismiss me, claiming she needed space. I found myself increasingly worried, especially when I heard from her therapist that Angela was doing well. I didn't understand the disconnect. After weeks of silence, I decided to visit her at her parents' house, even though I knew they were less than thrilled with me. When I arrived, I asked her parents where she was, but they refused to tell me. It felt like they were hiding something. My suspicions grew, and in a moment of desperation, I decided to sneak around the back of their house. To my shock, I found Angela on a swing in the backyard, flirting with a man I didn't recognize. My heart sank. The betrayal hit me like a freight train. When she saw me, she tried to stop me, but I was in such shock that I couldn't process her words. I shrugged her off, got into my car, and drove home, filled with a mix of anger and heartbreak. I blocked her on all social media platforms and reached out to my parents, demanding they help me find a lawyer. I felt like I had lost everything, and now I was determined not to let her manipulate me again. The divorce process was grueling. As I navigated the legal system, I felt like a shell of the person I used to be, emotionally detached but focused on my daughters. Angela had made her choice, and it was clear she was willing to prioritize her new relationship over her responsibilities as a mother. Despite the pain, I was grateful to my parents for helping me manage everything while I worked to provide for my girls. 5 years later, the divorce was finalized, and I was relieved. Angela had not received anything from the settlement, and I had made sure to protect my assets, all while ensuring my daughters were my priority. My life began to stabilize. I moved into a larger home, found financial independence, and forged a deeper bond with my daughters. They were happy, and I was determined to be the father they needed. But everything changed just a few days ago when Angela re-entered my life. I was preparing for work when the doorbell rang. There she stood, crying and holding a small child who looked about 3 or 4. My heart raced as I realized this was Angela's son. She told me she was there to make amends, to try and rekindle our marriage, as if she had the right to just step back into my life. I was taken aback. I had spent years healing, and the thought of her trying to return felt like a cruel joke. I firmly closed the door, telling her that this was no longer her family. I had moved on, and she had made her choices. It was over, and I refused to let her disrupt the peace I had finally found. But the situation only escalated when my parents called me, expressing their disappointment in how I handled things. They revealed that they had been in contact with Angela, that she had confided in them about her divorce from Sean, and that they believed she deserved another chance to be a mother to my girls. I was furious. How could they betray me like this? They argued that my daughters needed their mother, that it was selfish of me to keep her away. I felt blindsided and betrayed by the very people who had supported me during my darkest times. Despite our argument, they stood firm, believing that Angela had changed and was worthy of another chance. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. My parents had taken it upon themselves to meddle in my life without considering how it would affect me or my daughters. Their conviction that they had the right to decide what was best for my children left me feeling powerless. My girls were my responsibility, and I was determined to protect them from any potential harm. Then, just a week later, I uncovered the truth. My parents had not only shared my address with Angela, but they had also maintained contact with her throughout the years. They had facilitated secret meetings between her and my daughters, all while keeping me in the dark. My heart sank as I learned how easily they had deceived me. I confronted my girls, and to my dismay, they confessed that they had been visiting their mother, kept quiet out of fear and confusion. Realizing that my trust had been shattered on multiple fronts, I took action. I sought a restraining order against Angela and my parents, determined to protect my daughters from any further manipulation. I knew this would be difficult for the girls, but I felt it was necessary for their well-being. As we began therapy to navigate the fallout, I was determined to ensure they understood that they were safe and loved, free from the shadows of the past. While the road ahead would be challenging, I felt a sense of clarity. No one would come between me and my daughters again.